Okay, folks, so we're going to look at the King Lear mind map now. So you'll find this mind map on page 97 of your paper 2 notebook. And I suppose in terms of King Lear, this is your go-to document. More than anything else, more than the summaries, more than the analysis of the other characters, more than the different themes and topics that you'll see in your notebook and that we'll address in the live classes. This is the most important piece of work that you need to concentrate on. And the reason for that is because I'm telling you now, as far away as the exam is in the summer of 2025, if you knew what was on this mind map, if you knew it in detail, not comprehensively, not everything, but if you study this mind map, you will have plenty of information that you can use to answer questions in the Leaving Cert. So we're going to start with the first one of these 3 videos. I'm going to break this up into 3 because it's a lot of work. Just looking at how in Act 1, Scene 1, he's established as a tragic hero. What a tragic hero is, what he does, how he treats other people, how we as an audience respond to him in that act or in that scene. So I love that opening quote that I've got in the middle of the page here. And don't forget, as I said before with the mind maps, what you see on the screen is just a different layout from what you see in the book. The book mind map layout is designed to be easy to navigate. You start in the first page, bottom left-hand corner with the box with the thicker black line, work your way around following the arrows. I've put them into my shout out to my wonderful son who has put these into a presentation where it's easier for filming. But if you start at that bottom left-hand corner box, you will see each one of these slides as we go through. Okay? So, King Lear, the fool tells him in Act 1, "Thou hadst little wit in thy bald crown when thou gavest thy golden one away. Thou madest thy daughters thy mothers." Now, thou madest thy daughters thy mothers. Now, that's a brilliant quote because it just, there's so much going on there. So, first of all, his crown, okay? His golden crown. That's his royal authority. He gave his golden crown away. He abdicated. And doing that was a stupid, destructive act. So he had little wit in his mind. It wasn't something which was wise to do. He's an old man, the bald crown, not necessarily a sign of great age, but Lear is an old man. He is in his 9th decade. He is in his 80s, 80 and more. He's referred to in Act 4 of the play. But Lear is a man who is definitely, his judgment is impinged upon. His judgment is impaired by his age. Of that there is no question. And that contributes to his tragedy and the mistakes he makes at the start of the play. And then, of course, "Thou madest thy daughters thy mothers," a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant use of language by Shakespeare, a brilliant, playful use of language by the fool. And what does it mean? He transferred power to his daughters, and then he thought he could continue behaving the way he had before that happened, and that wasn't possible. So it's a great quote because it tells us so much about Lear. Now, as I said, we're going to get into what happens in Act 1, Scene 1. So, first of all, he's a tragic hero. Just let's get that set in our minds what a tragic hero is. So it's a archetype from drama that goes back to the ancient Greeks. Aristotle described the tragic hero in this way. I wonder, does this sound familiar to it? A male character of noble birth who experiences a reversal of fortune due to a tragic flaw. In addition, the realization of the flaw evokes sympathy. Now you can see Shakespeare, as a student of classical drama, has created King Lear in the frame of that Aristotelian description of a tragic hero. Lear is he's a king. He's a man of noble birth. He has a fatal flaw. That's his hubris. We'll talk about that in detail during this sequence of videos. He is brought low by his failings, and as he suffers and as he learns and moves from hubris to humility, from pompous self-importance and vanity to a sense of being humble and aware of his own fragility, sympathy grows for him. So that's tragic hero. We know that the whole catalyst for the story is his catastrophic decision to abdicate. We know in Act 1 scene 1, he announces that he is divided in 3, our kingdom, and it is our fast intent to shake all cares and business from our age. And he goes on to say that he's an old man and intends to retire and crawl towards death. So that decision at the beginning of the play, initially, it sounds as if he's being self-aware. It sounds as if he's being modest. He's old, he's not able to do the job anymore, he's handing power over. But that's an illusion. It's not what really is going on in his mind. And that idea of the gap between what appears to be true and what in reality is true, that gap between appearance versus reality, that is something that we see as a dominant kind of motif or aspect of the play. We know that Lear says that he is dividing the kingdom between his daughters. He says, we have this our constant will, to publish our daughters several dowers, that future strife may be prevented now. Now, that's a really, really, really important quote, that future strife may be prevented now, because it illustrates Lear's blindness. It foreshadows the strife to come. It's filled with irony because, and let's talk about this for a moment, by abdicating in the first place, and then by dividing the kingdom, and then by setting the terms, we'll get to that in a second, for the abdication, Lear is guaranteeing future strife. So there's a wonderful irony in his grand announcement that he's doing this to prevent trouble or conflict in the kingdom. By abdicating, he is, as a man, he is making a decision that only in the world of this play, which is set in pre-Christian Britain, only the gods can make. The gods decide who's king and who's not king. When Lear decides to resign or abdicate his position as king, he is disrupting what is called the natural order. Now, I'll do a video on kingship and power in the play at a later date, but the idea was that the gods or God picked a person to rule, and that person brought order and stability to the nation. When Lear abdicates, he disrupts the natural order, and what ensues is chaos. In the first scene, he is a deeply antipathetic character. So that's Antipathic. In other words, he's not likable. He's a bully. He's arrogant. He humiliates his daughters by subjecting them to the love test. Goneril, Regan and Cordelia are grown women of substance, of intelligence, of integrity, or dignity, Goneril certainly and Regan park their integrity in order to comply with their father when he asks, which of you shall we say that love us most? This is a really childish thing to demand of your children. This is a really cruel thing for Lear to ask his daughters to do, to confess or profess their great devotion and love publicly in front of, everybody that they know. So Shakespeare is deliberately making him a character who we are alienated from as an audience at the start of the play. We know that Goneril and Regan, we're going to see in a couple of minutes a little interaction which explains a lot of this, but Goneril and Regan, they get him. They're not stupid. They know what he's like. He's an egoist. He's vain, and he's opening up an opportunity for them here, because they live under his thumb, under his power. They've lived their whole life under his thumb and under his power. And here he's offering them an escape. So they're willing to exploit his vanity, his desire for flattery. If they have to debase and demean themselves and humiliate themselves in order to gain power, they're willing to do it. The decisions to abdicate and divide the kingdom were unwise. I've already explained why. But Lear makes mistake after mistake after mistake in the opening scene, and one of them, which compounds the others, is his treatment of Cordelia. Cordelia, who he introduces as our joy, my favourite, which again is something which is unpleasant to hear. He says that in front of Goneril and Regan. As a parent, that seems a very insensitive thing to say. And when Cordelia, showing sense and integrity and dignity and decency, says, "Nothing, my lord," and she tells him, "I love you, according to my bond, no more nor less." And what more can one ask for? That she loves him as any child should love her father. His response is not logical. It's not reasonable. It's irrational. And he lashes out and he says, "Here I disclaim all my paternal care, thou my sometime daughter." Now again, we could get into the nooks and crannies of his behaviour here, about whether he's in control or not, about whether or not Cordelia maybe should have made decisions to protect her father and sacrifice her dignity so that she could stay around him. That's for a different day. What matters is here, he's a bully. What matters is here, he abuses his power both as a father and as a king. What matters is here is that his behaviour is frightening and alienates the audience, and that's what Shakespeare wants here. Shakespeare wants him to be, as I said, an antipathetic character, not somebody that we like at the start of the play, because taking us on the journey where that he goes through a transformation and therefore our view of him is also changed. That's one of the most interesting things about the play. Blindness is a very important theme in this play. And the idea that Lear is so vain, so hubristic, you know that word I said to you before, hubris, that vanity, that overwhelming sense of self-importance that blinds him to the rest of, to reality. He is confronted by the folly of his decision by Kent. Kent is his loyal vassal. A vassal is somebody who serves the king. And Kent is his loyal vassal. And Kent asks him, "What wouldst thou do, old man? Thinkest thou that duty shall have dread to speak when power to flattery bows?" That's one of my favourite quotes in the play. I'd love you to learn it. It's a great quote. "Thinkest thou that duty shall have dread to speak when power to flattery bows?" Now, let's just translate that into kind of modern English. What are you doing, Lear? Do you think that they're still going to flatter you after you've handed them the power? Don't you understand? The only reason that they're flattering you is because you have power and they have none. When you have no power and they have all the power, it's going to be very different. So what Kent is doing is showing Lear, trying to get Lear to see the truth. But Lear cannot see it because at the beginning of the play, as I said, he's blinded by hubris, and it's only then as the play progresses and he suffers greatly that he's cleansed of that suffering through his hubris. His impatience, his intolerance of defiance, his tendency to abuse power is very, very clear in the way he treats both Cordelia and Kent. And there's two great quotes that I would highly recommend you learn from Act 1, Scene 1, where Lear threatens Kent not to come between the dragon and his rat. "Come not between the dragon and his rat." And then "the bow is bent, make from the shaft." Again, we have examples of Lear's perception of himself as a powerful man, but also his willingness to use that power to crush dissent, again, is unattractive in his character in Act 1, Scene 1. And also indicative of his folly. I keep on using that word. Foolish decision making. He won't listen to Kent. He won't listen to reason, and his reaction is violent and unpleasant. I talked about him making not one mistake, but another and another and another. And then there's the final really huge mistake. So mistake number 1, abdicating. Mistake number 2, dividing the kingdom. Mistake number 3, believing Goneril and Regan. Mistake number 4, banishing Cordelia, disowning Cordelia. Mistake number 5, not listening to Kent and banishing him as well. Mistake number 6 is this condition that he puts on the abdication. And I just think it's really interesting because it indicates something about his mind at this time. What he says here is patently impossible. But Lear is so full of his own sense of importance that he believes that the rules don't apply to him. In other words, things that might be impossible for others are possible for him. Now let's look at the quote and let me just explain what I mean by that. He announces that our self-by-monthly course, he's talking to Goneril and Regan, this is after Cordelia has been disowned. He announces our self-by-monthly course, with reservation of 100 nights, by you to be sustained, shall our abode make with you by due turn, only we shall retain the name and all of the addition to a king. Now, guys, I cannot emphasize how important this is. The symbolism, it's related to power, themes to do with blindness and deception. It's just, and of course Lear's character, and of course Goneril and Regan's character. It's just a great moment in the play. Here's what he's saying. When he says our, by the way, he's speaking using the royal plural personal pronoun because he speaks on behalf of himself and the kingdom. When he says, I've divided, right, Goneril, you get this part of the kingdom, Regan, you get this part of the kingdom. And every month I'm going to switch. I'm going to go and stay with Goneril 1 month and Regan the next month. And I'm going to keep a private army. The word we use to describe this, the 100 Knights, is a retinue. You'll have seen it in the act and scene videos. And this 100 Knights is going to be massively important for him. It's an army. It's a private army. So he has this, he's giving up power, but he's retaining power. Now, again, you can't do that. And then he says, I'm going to keep the name king. Now, you're aware of the fact, I know you are, that often after service ends, titles are retained. So a professor could become a professor emeritus. So they're not working in the university anymore, but they still have the title professor. An American president can serve for 4 or 8 years, but they will always retain that title president. President Obama, President Bush, they still have that title today. But they don't have any of the power. They don't have any of the authority. But Lear is saying he wants to retain the name, and crucially, guys, all the addition to a king. That is just so important. Because what's the addition to a king? Respect, honor, power. So he is saying, I want to give up power. I'm abdicating. But by the way, I want you still to treat me as if I'm the king and respect me and my royal power. Now, that's an impossible paradox. It makes no sense. It's irrational. It's evidence of a mind that isn't really functioning on a logical level. That's where Lear is at the start of this play. While he is a bully, while he is arrogant, while he is hubristic, while he abuses his power and mistreats people, he's also clearly not fully functioning. He's also clearly not operating in the world of reason. That decision there, if all the other things hadn't happened, that decision there guarantees the future strife and puts Goneril and Regan in an invidious position. Invidious means not to be envied. What are they supposed to do? He's handed them power, then he's saying, I'm still keeping power, you have to respect me as. So they either accept that really the abdication was a nonsense and they have no power, or they're going to have to stand up to him and show him the new reality that he's created. So later on in the play, when we see Goneril and Regan, go on this spiral of corruption, and yes, they are villains, we always have to remember the context of the situation that Lear engineered through his decision to abdicate and the terms that he placed on the abdication. So, he is foolish, he is acting in a way which is hypocritical. The King of France, who is the only equal that he encounters, so he can't punish the King of France, he has no power of the King of France. King of France challenges his behaviour, again, like Kent and like Cordelia, pointing out his folly, saying, this is most strange, that she, who even but now was your best object, commit a thing so monstrous to dismantle so many folds of favour. Like my accent's amazing. The King of France is saying, it's weird. What you're doing is weird, Lear. A minute ago she was your joy, and now you're saying you don't love her anymore. Again, does Lear listen? No, he's deaf to these words. Does he see the truth of what France is saying? No, he's blind. What is this force that causes him to ignore France when he should listen to France, to ignore Kent when he should listen to Kent, to ignore Cordelia? It's his pride. His pride, his hubris is so overweening, so powerful that it negates everything else and everyone else and their voices. I mentioned that there's a bit of an interaction between Goneril and Regan, which really does give us insights into the nature of Lear as a man. And I just think it's worthwhile, and I know you probably switched the video off ages ago. This is only part 1 of this. It's really fascinating, this. The end of Act 1, Scene 1. Everybody leaves the stage other than Goneril and Regan. And they have this conversation. Regan talks about her father's incredible behaviour. She says, 'tis the infirmity of his age. So she's saying, oh, he's behaving like this because he's really old. He's not in his right mind. But then she says, yet he has ever but slenderly known himself. Now that's important. She's saying, okay, he's behaving really weird because he's kind of old and not in control, but he's always been vain. He's always been arrogant. He's never really been conscious of the fact that his behaviour impacts so negatively on people. Goneril responds by saying, the best and soundest of his time has been but rash.
Then must we look to receive from his age not alone the imperfections of long and graft condition, but therewithal a truly waywardness and infirm and choleric years bring with them. Now again, you might find that difficult to understand, but drill down into it. Look at those words. He has always been rash, and this is a long and grafted condition. So this is maybe the abdication and his behaviour in this scene is maybe a particularly potent version of his arrogant, bullying behaviour. But he's been like this for a long time. Long and grafted means as long as she's known him, she's his daughter, she's at least in her 30s. He's always been like this. So we can't excuse him by saying, oh, he's not in his right mind. His age and his inability to see things rationally, that makes this already pre-existing vanity and pomposity, makes it worse, but it's always been there. And then Regan says, look, such unconstant starts are we like to have from him as this of Kent's punishment. And Goneril says, you're right. And then she says, pray you, let's hit together. If our father carry authority with such dispositions as he bears, this last surrender of his will but offend us. And then she goes on and says, we must do something and in a heat. Now, guys, just look at that there. It's fascinating. He has created a situation where Goneril and Regan are saying, Christ, this is worse than normal, but it's not untypical of him. And if we don't do something, if we don't work together, he's gonna take back what he's given us. We've waited our whole lives for freedom. We've suffered our whole lives under his bullying, tyranny. And now we have a chance to get away from underneath it. We can't let him take that back. So that's a really, really, really fascinating piece of dialogue. I think it really tells us a lot about Lear and about Goneril and about Regan and about that relationship, power dynamics, loads to talk about. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant scene in the play. So I'll end that little analysis that's the end of the Lear Mind Map Part 1, and have a look and you'll see Lear Mind Map Part 2 if you just can't get enough.